An EM breaks my friend's window. While she's masturbating and a lot happens. My college friend Emily called me recently to tell me something that happened like 15 minutes ago. Emily was alone in her apartment where she was on the ground level and had the window shades closed, but the window cracked open as she has told me that her central air is often broken and it gets stuffy. Important info. She was doing as this post is titled, having alone time, and was nude doing it, and she said she was being very quiet. When she hears the sound of her window squeak, and this young boy's face pops in through the blinds, and she screams. Emily is on the other side of the room, and the kid pulls out a phone and takes a picture while she is recoiled and runs off. She told me initially she was shocked and pissed, but she's used to it as she works as an exotic dancer and has a plethora of other inappropriate conduct stories, and just decides to stay out of it and not get messed up in whatever terrible adult parents that child. She told me after she started again, she heard a scream of a woman outside, "No, that's illegal." And what do you know? A few seconds later, and rapid banging on the door starts, and Emily just grabs a blanket to cover herself, goes into her bathroom. Her apartment is very, very small, and essentially one room, so when what happens next happened, there wasn't much room for her to use. After prolonged banging on the door, the woman moves to the window and starts banging on that and yelling, "You cannot be indecent in front of children. This is illegal, and I will have you arrested, pedophile." And things of that nature when, lo and behold, glass ain't that strong, and after a few colorful phrases, the woman's hand passes straight through the pane and shatters it. She stops for a second, and then pokes her head in first, saying that, "This is not breaking property, as you are the aggressor." And then she continues. Emily is very freaked out at this point, and calls the cops while the woman is yelling. She told me the cops had to ask several times to repeat, as the EM was screaming things about abuse, and how her poor baby boy will need therapy after what she showed him. They said a couple officers would be over and she hung up. The EM will not shut up and pulls out her phone and starts recording, telling her phone the story she created, and informing the imaginary audience about this pervert, and how she is going to get Emily on a blacklist and calling her a molester. Now Emily is a real strong lady IMO. She's had to deal with a lot of entitled people, and I have many stories starring humanities, most choice people, mostly nasty men, so she can be very calm and collected in these scenarios. She said she calmly walked over and tried to close the window and push the mother's head out. Her window is one of those ones with an upper and lower part, and she brought the upper one all the way down, which leaves maybe 6-7 inches of space at the bottom. The mother screams assault and tries to grab Emily, but only grabs the blanket she used to cover up and rips it off her. EM sliced her arm on the broken window, and she ended up taking the curtains down with her, so the window is unobstructed, and now Emily finds that some neighbors have gathered. Emily hops deeper into the apartment, into her kitchen, and calls me, telling me this all the while. I hear in the background the familiar sounds of a horribly loud and obnoxious mother. I've worked a few retail jobs and have dealt with the worst of the worst, particularly pet owners. After a few minutes of monologue, there were distant sirens, and she hung up, telling me she'd call back. She said she was nervous of what might happen, but ended. It's saying that the worst part of this was that this bitch and her bitchlet couldn't give me 5 minutes to finish what I was in the goddamn middle of. Haven't heard much back yet, lol. But she did text me about 10 minutes after. Can't TLK much, looking good. Officer restrained mom. In the clear? Haven't heard much back yet, lol, but she did text me about 10 minutes after. Can't like you much, looking good, officer restrained mom, in the clear? Update 1. 2 cars arrived at her house with 3 officers. One was checking the window, another was tending to the kid, while the kid is crying at the poor cop's feet as the coo, and another talked to the mother, who apparently was yelling for a while, but had calmed down a lot by now. Emily came out of her apartment after dressing herself, and one of the cops talking to them, mom steps aside to get Emily's story, keeping the parties involved apart, as to keep from affecting story retellings. She tells him what happened, and asked about easy ways to deal with this without too much action. All she wanted was repair money and to be rid of the situation. The cop by the window interviews the people who were watching separately from each other, and the mother gets interviewed. Emily said she overheard her say, "That slut," a couple times, but she had apparently calmed down a lot. After a while, the cops had asked Emily if she wanted to press charges, as they had the witnesses, including one guy who caught the tail end of this fun night on video, and apparently at first, the mother tried to lie her way out, saying that Emily grabbed her son through the window and made him touch her, and she broke the window in defense. But EM changed her story quickly to something slightly more rational about her getting upset at public indecency when she calmed down. Maybe getting nervous about lying in front of a cop? At this point, EM was holding her sweet baby boy, caressing his head and saying sweet things. Emily only had 2 demands, which were 1, that the photos taken were to be gone, and 2, that the woman pay for her damages. EM got very upset and teary-eyed and stammered about how she couldn't afford it. But after some time, she agreed to the organization of a small claims tort settlement meeting, which I believe is the phraseology she used, and Emily wants to aim for within a month. The mother had seriously chilled from where she was and was now crying intermittently. Really, for no reason. My girl here was giving her a huge out. The cops took some notes and promised Emily that the photo would be wiped, and that the video taken would be wiped, and that they would handle it all. One officer even said that she had a lot more potential here in a case for a lawsuit, and could get her a few charges off the top of his head. But she expressed her deep interest in keeping this on the DL and handling in a way that she wouldn't have to think about it again. The officer said, "What a lot of you guys have told me with advice," and Emily said that it seems like a good idea. At this point, she filed an official report with enough evidence showing there was no way Emily could have the fault, and the EM would be responsible. Video started around the time Emily pushed her head out, and it clearly showed the window was already broken inward, and many witnesses saying the mother broke the window. So Emily won't be responsible for injury on her own property. Emily said that she really didn't like the idea of someone having images of her when she wasn't ready or prepared, as most people would be. She lives in a small town, so people tend to be kind, and one of the officers even offered to board up my friend's Widnow for her temporarily, which she very politely declined, as she likes doing everything herself and is a handy woman. But the gentleman gave her contact info for an inexpensive repairman, which she appreciated. The officers gave her some info and helped exchange info with EM, and Emily just turned around inside. Before she left, the mother stopped crying, and she heard her say to the officer that she would pay the cost of a window and not a penny more. "I did nothing else wrong," followed by an audible sigh from the officer. She has no idea how easy she got off having fucked with someone who has way better things to do in her mind. When I called her, Emily had told me the story, and I gave her some advice, as well as a few suggestions from Redditors, which a lot didn't fly with her, as she really does and want more of this. But one thing that she did say she would bring up in the tort settlement is the idea of some sort of parental reprimanding, or classes or something, to teach this piece of garbage a lesson in raising a child. As many of you pointed out, this kid probably has done similar actions in the past. She keeps saying how she doesn't want a big fuss of this, and misses life back on the island, where Jimbo, the massive security guard, could take care of entitled people, men mostly, out with one fell swoop. She never wants to have to deal with Karens any more than she physically must, as she's had to deal with many an asshole in her career. Girl just wants to hike, get high, and do her job that she enjoys and keep it that way. By the end of the call, she was getting more worked up and slowly considered pressing more intense charges. And I told her she should look into the info the officer gave her so she can educate herself on it. She was getting like post-anger from everything. Emily gets very nervous about getting legal with offenders, as she has had a bunch of incidents in the past of things happening at other clubs, and she or other dancers trying to charge, but everything backfiring, so she has her reservations. But before we hung up, she said that there was still one officer there, taking the stories of the passers-by, and told me I might be right, and she will go inquire about pressing. I guess more updates to come much later, if I get them, as I am not aware how long trials take, but from what I know of her, I think she's going to do what she can for the sake of getting the kid a future, where he doesn't end up a predator, as it looks like that's the track he is headed down. If a trial happens, or I get more info, I will absolutely update again. Either way, she's bound to have another interesting interaction with EM, as they do have a settlement already, and now will probably be going to court. I guess moral of the story is don't interrupt a lady when she's doing very important business. She signed off by saying, "Not even in the fucking mood to finish. This was all such a clusterfuck, I'm so overstimulated."